So, the quiet revolution. It's already pretty quiet. So, I think it's appropriate to have a retreat, which is a very short one, that deals with the hindrances, the 5 hindrances that we encounter when we are attempting to develop calm and insight. We need both the calm of the mind and to be able to see into the mind. If the mind is disturbed, if it's colored, which brings us to the first hindrance. The simile the Buddha gives is like water, which you pour a lot of colors into. So you pour red and blue and green and yellow dyes into the water. You won't be able to see what's actually inside the water. You won't be able to see the ground of that body of water because of the colors. If you have water that is boiling, again, boiling water, the surface is disturbed, you're unable to look into this body of water. If you have moth grazing or various kind of plants that grow on the surface of the water, again, it's impossible for you to see into this body of water. If the water is muddy, murky, again, you won't be able to see into this body of water. So these things the Buddha gives as similes for those hindrances. I guess everybody has guessed by now that the colors is the equivalent to the first hindrance of sensuality, a desire for pleasure in that world, seeking delight in the world of the senses, sight, sounds, smells, tastes and touches. And that world is what we call kama chanda, the permission for the mind to engage in that world. I always like that word chanda in that connection, because the chanda for the monks is the a permission to go ahead in their absence. Like when I'm sick and I have to stay in my kuti for the Sangha-kamma, Patimokkha recitation or anything else, but I'm in the same sima, so technically I would have to be part of that congregation of monks to do the Sangha transaction. Then I can give my chanda, I can give my allowance, I can give my permission to one of the monks, and then he can take it to the Sangha, and so then the Sangha can go ahead in my absence with my consent to whatever decision they make. It's a very practical way. The Buddha was very ingenious devising the whole of the Vinaya for the monks, because those set of rules, they are meant to protect the Sangha, and also they are for the longevity of the Sangha. Because invariably, as time goes on, the defilements in the world increase. People are not as beautiful people anymore in this world as they may have been around at the time of the Buddha. So with greed, hatred and delusion increasing, it was good that the Buddha set forth these rules. But anyway, before I go off on a tangent, the idea was just to let you know that this chanda in the context of sensuality is like a permission. It's like we give the mind, we quietly give the mind permission to indulge in the world of the senses. And that's what's called the first hindrance. And that's when you pour colors or dyes into the water. You can't see. And of course the second one, the boiling water, is the anger, the aversion, hatred, what the Buddha called boiling water. And it's a very beautiful simile as well, because when we are boiling with rage, we go red in the face. And sometimes our rage, our anger doesn't extend that far, but nevertheless there is the underlying negativity, there is the constant complaining, moaning, bitching about this, that and the other. A negative mind, a mind that is not content. And that's part of the second hindrance. So water that is boiling. And then I'll probably get it wrong with the other next two, but I can't remember exactly. But I think the sloth and torpor was the one where the water is covered over with moss. And so you got moss over the water, algae, whatever. Again, you can't see into the water. And sloth and torpor is a bit like that. It's like your mind is grown over with moss. It's all kind of, all sorts of plants cover you and put you into this state of torpor, a state of sloth, sluggishness, inability to be sharp, for the mind to be lazy, to be torporous, whatever the word, and many synonyms for that. But generally they call it sloth and torpor, so let's stick with that. And then the last one, or the second but last one, is about restlessness and remorse. And I can't remember, I think the last one was the muddy water, which was the doubt. Anybody remember what the simile for restlessness was? Ripples, there you go. There you go.
Stirred by the wind.
Yeah, so the ripples on the water, stirred by the wind, that's what you get for the restlessness. And it's quite interesting to, if you think about ripples on the water, it's not big waves, but it's the ripples that sometimes cause us to be restless. It's not being able to be still, not being able to be at peace, not being able to just stay with the present moment. And it's also caused by this second part of this hindrance, which is called remorse. There's usually a lapse in our virtue, some kind of thing we should have done or we shouldn't have done, something we are feeling remorse, regret, sadness about. So that's also something that ripples the mind, something that stirs the mind up. There's the mind that is not really at ease, not really at peace. And then you have the general restlessness, which is like a general inability to just be still. There's constantly something nagging. There's constantly something that's stirring the mind. And that's why ripples is a very good simile for that as well. And then the muddy waters is the doubt, where everything is so murky, so cloudy, that you've got no way of knowing which way to go. You can't look into the water. And I like these similes because they give us this, what do you call it, the idea that the mind is like a body of water into which you can look. So the mind is, and a body of water also has depth. So there's a lot of depth to the mind. You can look deep into the mind. And you can imagine a huge body of water. And we haven't even scratched the surface of it yet. So we're playing around with these hindrances all the time. We're just dealing with the surface here. I just went to the aquarium the other day on Sentosa, the newly opened aquarium. Because I like fish, I like the water, I like the ocean. I used to be a scuba diver when I was a layperson, and I've seen a lot of beautiful underwater worlds. And so for me, always the simile of water, I like being the mind. And also these various creatures that you find in the ocean. And the deeper you go, the more mysterious they become, the more strange they become. And so it's an exploration of this mysterious phenomenon we call the mind, which nobody really seems to know. You ask people about what they think what the mind is, you get the most preposterous answers. I suppose if I asked around now, I don't want to embarrass anyone, but it's crazy, isn't it? I mean, we're experiencing life, yeah. We're going through life, and we don't even know what this life is made up of, what it consists of. All we know is that which we encounter on the surface, which is the mind looking out through the body, through these senses, and trying to find happiness in a world that is outside of the mind. It's outside. Imagine the fish looking for something on the land. I mean, it's not even their territory. So we're awkwardly trying to find pleasure and happiness in a world that we can't control. A world that doesn't obey our desires. A world that is impossible for us to really bring to a state where it gives us what we want, what we hope for. Because the world of the senses is always changing, is always moving, is always a little bit more out of reach. And so the idea is, well, if I can only just get that, then I'll be happy. If I get the next thing, then everything will be good. And when you're in school, you have to do this next exam. This is really important. And you finish that exam, and it's got to be another exam, and another one, and another one, and another one. And then they throw you out into the world with the promise, now you've got finished all the exams, you got all your studies, now you get a wonderful job. And you got to look for a job. If you're lucky, you find one. If not, so it's not really holding up the promise, is it? And so what we're doing is we're going 180 degrees the opposite way. We look into the mind rather than taking the mind out into the world. So we're looking back at this body of water, but in order to be able to look into it, we need to look through these hindrances. And we have to overcome them. We have to clean the water. We have to distill, if you like, even the water. We have to get rid of the colors, make sure it's not boiling, get rid of the moss, stop the ripples, make it clear, crystal clear, so we can actually look into it. There's another description, but maybe I'll leave that for later on, how the Buddha talks about these hindrances, because this morning is supposed to be a little bit about introducing the meditation itself. Which is not to say that dealing with the hindrances is anything other than dealing with the meditation, because as soon as we do sit down, close our eyes, try to make the mind peaceful, use a meditation object, and those hindrances will be there. And they will be harassing us in one form or another. So how do you deal with them? How do you deal with these forces that we seemingly can't control? First of all, we have to realize that they are conditioned, that they are formed, that they are compounded, that they are put together, put in place through conditions we created in the past. And such, when they arrive, they're already there. And rightly so, because we created the causes for them to be there. So instead of complaining or trying to fight them, all we can do is recognize them for what they are, and see if that place of recognition is one from which we can be the ones who observe, so that we can actually see these hindrances not so much as ours, but as something that arises in the mind because of conditions. Every time we manage to assume that position of the observer, we can step one step back from what is happening. We're no longer so immersed, no longer so involved, no longer so entangled by what we observe. And that is why in meditation we need a very firm anchor, a very firm means to tie the mind to the present, to tie the mind to the moment. And for most people, using the breath is almost hopeless. People are so scattered, so distracted, the mind is so fickle, that you start watching the breath, it's very difficult for many people to stay with the breath. Even though the breath is supposed to be the number one meditation object, as the Buddha called it, for the stilling of thought, for the ending of thought, for the cutting through thought. So meditation on the breath is supposed to be the one that really helps us make the mind stop all this useless thinking. But again, the thinking itself is also conditioned. So, what do we expect from meditation? If we spend our days running after sense pleasures, we spend our days indulging in thinking, never reining the mind in, never tying it down, never finding the mind a playmate, as it were, that is conducive to peace. And that's what the meditation object is supposed to be. It's like a playmate. And a playmate's supposed to be fun. A playmate's supposed to be happy. It's supposed to be something that we enjoy. So we got to give the mind something that it enjoys. So if you enjoy the breath, if you really do, you find the mind will want to stay with the breath. I trained myself for so many years that my mind just leaps towards the breath as soon as I have nothing to do. The mind automatically goes back to the breath. I don't even have to close my eyes, because the breath is my best friend. It's my playmate. So I conditioned myself, and it was hard work, to be happy with my breath. I don't need to think all the time. Most of it is a waste of time anyway. But once the breath is not yet your best friend, and you're still trying, and I still also use a meditation word. And I find it's the most direct way, because we're thinking anyway. We might as well have one thought, one good thought, one skillful thought, one thought that is conducive to peace, to happiness. And that thought, it could be the Buddha, Dhamma, or the Sangha. It could be an aspect of your contemplation of the body. It could be some fantasy word that you come up with yourself. I remember I used to do just now. Breathing in, just. Breathing out, now. Just now, just now, just now. And it worked for a while until the mind got bored with it. And then it started thinking again. So it's like you got to be ingenious. You got to keep on top of the defilements. You got to be on top of things. And sometimes you can change these meditation words around. You faith in the Buddha, use Buddho, or Dhammo, or Sangho. And do some body contemplation, use the 5 kamatthana that the monks get when they ordain as novices. Kesa, Loma, Naka, Danta, Tacho. Anybody know what they are? Hair of the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth, skin. They're beautiful because they're 2-syllable words as well. So you can use them very conducively for your breath as well. Kesa, hair of the head. Loma, hair of the body. Naka, nails. Danta, it's like dental, isn't it? Danta, teeth. Tacho, skin. And talking about 5 hindrances, I mean that's the world, isn't it? The world of hair of the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth and skin. That's the world we want. It's the world of the body. It's what we see when we look at another person. We don't see brain, we don't see guts, we don't see heart, liver, spleen, kidneys. We don't see snot, pus, blood, sweat, fat, tears, grease, spittle. No, we just see hair of the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth and skin. And that's how much we actually know. It's a bit like the mind. We don't know the depth of the ocean, of this body of water we call the mind. No, we see the depth of the body which lies beneath the surface of hair of the head, hair of the body, nails, teeth and skin, which is why we don't understand what this body really is. And we still trust it. We still believe that it can give us what we want. And of course, if you're in your 20s or in your teens, the world still seems promising. You get a bit older, you realize, oh man, must be I didn't read the small print in the contract or something. All that stuff I didn't sign up for. So, but the sooner you start training your mind, if your mind is well trained, by the time you get 60, like I got last year, turned 60, your body turns 60, you can ask yourself, well, how old is my mind, actually? I don't think my mind is 60. Some people's minds, they never seem to grow up. Other people's minds, they're already old when they're young. So it's what we bring with us into this world, isn't it? I mean, the mind is what we bring with us in a sense. I mean, of course, it's all the five aggregates we bring with us, but it's like the mind is sort of that which, has all the conditioning. That's where all the stuff. Nobody really knows where it's stored. Where's karma stored anyway? Yeah. Where is it all stored? Who remembers, or what remembers, or where is the memory of all the good things you did in the past and all the bad things you did in the past? And how does it work that you're supposed to receive the fruits of your actions? You're the heir to your karma, born of your karma, related to your karma, abide supported by your karma. Where is that karma? So the mind and the body, we need to understand what they are. If we just look at the surface of the body, all we see is hair, the head, hair, the body, nails, teeth, and skin. And all the rest we rather not see. And even those five, when they get old, they lose their appeal. It takes a lot of effort to keep looking good once you're beyond a certain age. I always say when you're sort of in your late 30s, early 40s, you can still pretend. But once you hit 50, that's it. No more lying to yourself. You wake up, look in the mirror in the morning, you go, oh no. But then you got to go out there and still pretend, So wouldn't it be nicer if we all didn't have to pretend? You just sort of walk around in your pajamas or your jogging pants and sort of be at ease. Now I have to still put on the show, isn't it? The show must go on. That's what it's like. So at least for ourselves, we don't need to put a show on for ourselves. So we got to learn to be honest with ourselves. And it's training the mind that is really worthwhile. It doesn't mean that we have to be bashing our body or denying it or kind of torturing ourselves or becoming overly ascetic. But there's a sense of reason with which we can, put these things into perspective. When we have a perspective on it, they're no longer able to push and pull us around so much. So the hindrances, they really work on that delusion, on that illusion of a self. So that's what the hindrances actually do. They fuel delusion. They fuel ignorance. The Buddha once said that that even avijja, it may not have like a cause. You can't say where ignorance began. Yeah, it's like you can't say where birth began. It's like in samsara, it's impossible to say where it started. Yeah? Because the samsara is beginningless. And it's also endless. So you can't say that, you can't point to a first point where ignorance started and before there was no ignorance. It's impossible. But what the Buddha said is that ignorance has its nutriment, it has its food. And what feeds ignorance, what feeds delusion? Essential desire, hatred, sloth and torpor, restlessness and remorse, and doubt. So those hindrances, they weaken our calm, they weaken our peace, they destroy our concentration, and they also are destroyers of wisdom. They kill any hope for developing understanding into the true nature of our existence. And that's why it's these hindrances that need to be overcome if we want to have any hope of, one, getting into states of samadhi, and two, developing a true wisdom which leads to insight and ultimately to liberation from suffering, to liberation from birth, and by liberation from birth, also to liberation from old age, sickness and death. So the meditation then needs to start at a place where we give our mind something to do. That's what a meditation object is. It needs to be an object that, like I said, we enjoy, has meaning, that is uplifting, something that is enjoyable, something that is wholesome. The wholesomeness of a meditation object. So finding a way, finding a meditation word that works for you. And I mean, like I said, traditionally as Buddhists we can use the word Buddho, which means the one who knows, or the knowing. And isn't that what we try to develop? Knowing, understanding. So the Buddha being the one who knows. It's a nice word, it's a beautiful word. It's a simple word. It's one word, one meaningful word that we can reduce this obsessively thinking mind to. It's by reducing our thoughts to one wholesome thought. And if we want to use our breath, especially if we're trying to develop it into this proper meditation, then using this meditation word alongside with the breath is a very, very direct, a very, very clear method. And many other techniques, obviously, for the purpose of this one day kind of a meditation workshop, and just stick with that. So try and use this meditation word along with your breath. And I keep telling people that for me, in my own meditation, it's this, because the Buddha gives us stages, doesn't he? He gives us stages to aspire towards. Because if you're trying to jump into the deep end, you're trying to achieve too much, too fast in your meditation, you just get frustrated. You get discouraged. So being able to watch the whole breath without any thoughts plaguing you in between, it's almost impossible for people in the beginning. So that's why the Buddha said, well, first of all, start knowing whether you're breathing in or you're breathing out. Breathing in, I know I am breathing in. And breathing out, I know I am breathing out. So there's your knowing, there is your mind, there is your heart, there is consciousness, knowing in the present moment, right now, I am breathing in. Knowing in the present moment, right now, I am breathing out. And then you can go off thinking as much as you like until the next out-breath. You got to come back knowing, now I'm breathing out. Then you can go thinking again until the breath comes in. Now I am breathing in. Then you can go thinking again till the breath goes out. Now I am breathing out. You see what I mean? If you can achieve that at least once, during every in-breath, there is enough mindfulness to know that you're breathing in. That's achievable, isn't it? It doesn't take too much mindfulness. You'll still lose it. But after a while, it becomes possible. And that gives you encouragement. And that gives you faith. That gives you the motivation to keep going. So once you get to the stage where every time you breathe in, at least once during that in-breath, you know, now I'm breathing in. Every time you're breathing out, you know, at least once, now I'm breathing out. That you can do. That you can start with. And it gives you a sense of happiness already. Because isn't it what we get when we achieve things? A sense of happiness, a sense of feeling good. And that's what you should do. You should feel good. You should encourage yourself. You should feel happy if you can do that. Because it's the happiness that keeps you going. It's the joy that keeps you going. It's a small sense of being in control, isn't it? Usually the mind is just so uncontrollable, it just runs off with you. And you're daydreaming and fantasizing and remembering and planning the future, and it's just all over the place. Now here, what you do is with each in-breath and with each out-breath, at least there's enough mindfulness to know at one point, aha, now I'm breathing in. That feels good. Now I'm breathing out. It feels good. And it's only much later, once you really feel that that stage of the meditation is actually achieved, that you want to attempt the next stage. So what I do with the meditation word, I draw it as long as the in-breath goes. And I draw the second syllable out as long as the out-breath goes. So, Buddha, or just now. But you got to be careful, because you start watching the breath like that, you're quite likely to start manipulating your breath. You're quite likely to start controlling your breath. So if you find that you're actually pushing your breath out, or you're pulling the breath in, then you're doing it wrong. You got to stop. You got to tell the breath, you know what you're doing. Whether I watch you or I don't watch you, you still go in and out until you don't. But in the meantime, I'll let you do your job. So you give confidence, you give your trust to the breath, that the breath knows what it's doing. And you're just using that meditation word as a reminder. You're drawing the meditation word along with the breath, but you allow the breath to be determining itself. So you're not controlling the length of the breath, the depth of the breath, the kind of the breath, whichever. You just allow the breath to breathe naturally. Allow the breath to breathe in the way that it wants to breathe, naturally. And you just repeating that meditation word alongside with your in-breath. Inside your mind. And then in the second stage, where you begin to want to experience the whole breath, from the very beginning of the in-breath to the very end of the in-breath, from the very beginning of the out-breath to the very beginning or end of the out-breath. So the complete length of the in-breath, the complete length of the out-breath, you want to watch the whole thing, including the breaks in between the in and out breath. But when I start on that stage, when I feel like I have enough mindfulness to attempt to watch the whole breath, experience the whole breath, When I get ready for that, I don't draw the meditation word out all the way along the in and the out breath. I'll just use the meditation word put at the very beginning of the in-breath as a reminder. Now I'm breathing in. And then I'll watch the whole breath going in. And I use the word to, just quickly once, quietly in the mind, to, as a reminder. Aha, now the breath is going out. But then I watch the breath. And I don't repeat the second syllable, or I don't draw it out as long as the out-breath. I just use it at the beginning of the out-breath, just like I use the first syllable at the beginning of the in-breath. So it goes put, you watch the in-breath. To, you watch the out-breath. So there you're trying to be with the breath all the way. And of course that is a lot more difficult, isn't it? But I still use the meditation word at that stage, because I feel even then my mindfulness sometimes isn't strong enough to really be exclusively with the breath, from the very beginning of the in-breath, the very end of the in-breath, very beginning of the out-breath, the very end of the out-breath. There's still not enough mindfulness to do it on my own, as it were. So I still need that help with the meditation word. And if you find that useful, if you find that helpful, you can try that out yourselves as well. And only later on then, when the mindfulness is really strong and the breath is something that I can hold in my mind comfortably without controlling it, the breath is just there, doing its thing, and the mind is there, watching. So the breath is breathing, the mind is knowing. They're two separate realities. They're two separate realities. The breath is the physical reality. The knowing is the mental reality. So the breath stands representative of the four elements. Being the breath, being the air element, is representative of fire, earth, water and space. It's representative of these four elements in the sense that the breath is the king, it's the chief. Because if you breathe out and you're not breathing in, you're dead. Your life depends on one in-breath, one out-breath. First thing that goes when you die is the breath, the wind element. Only then the heat element goes, and the water element goes, and then the earth element goes. So the breath is breathing. That's nature doing its thing. It's not me, it's not mine, it's not myself. And it's only if you realize that you can proceed to the end of the first tetrad in what we call the Anapanasati Sutta, the teaching on mindfulness of breathing, where the Buddha says to calm the physical formations. The physical formation is the in and out breathing, because the in and out breathing forms your physical part, your body. So the Buddha calls it the bodily formation. So the last thing you do in the first tetrad of that particular teaching is you're calming the breath. But the Buddha didn't call it the breath at that point. He says what you're calming, what you're supposed to calm, is the bodily formation, which means it presupposes that you realize at that stage that that's what you're actually watching. You're no longer watching my breath. It's no longer I am breathing. There is just breath happening. And that breath is nature, pure and simple. It's just nature doing what nature does. Breathing in, breathing out. It's a physical formation. It's a bodily formation. And as such, the way you calm the bodily formation, the way you really calm the breath, is by completely leaving it alone. Except that you're still aware of it. But you leave it completely alone. You allow nature to do its thing. And you allow the mind, which is also nature, to do its thing. And what does the mind do best? It knows. What else is it supposed to do? The mind is knowing. The mind is that which knows. But these two, they need to be in perfect harmony. They need to be in perfect tandem at that point. Because if the breath becomes more and more and more and more and more peaceful, if you're calming the bodily formation, if you're calming the breath, because you realize it's the bodily formation, it's not yours, you're leaving it alone, the breath becomes very peaceful, very subtle, very still, chances are you fall asleep. And of course that's the problem, isn't it, with anapanasati. That's why the mind, which is the second half of the equation, is the second half of the meditation, it needs to be awake. So that to the extent that the breath calms down, the mind needs to wake up. So the mind needs to become ever sharper, ever clearer, ever more mindful, ever more present, ever more aware of what's going on that level of breathing. So the exclusiveness of the breath at that point is important, because you don't want anything else to interfere. All there is breath breathing, mind knowing. And what the mind knows at this stage is the whole of the breath, from the very beginning of the in-breath to the end of the in-breath, very beginning of the out-breath to the end of the out-breath. That's all it knows. Usually the mind knows a lot of things, and that's what the hindrances are all about. It knows sights and sounds and smells and tastes and touches and thoughts and memory and the past and the future and whatever, the whole circus of life. But at that stage, what we're supposed to know is just the breath, but as a bodily formation, as nature. And as if that stage is really achieved, the mind is just kicking back. It's just like relaxing in a nice, comfy chair. And it just watches something very beautiful. It watches bodily formation. It watches a breath that is so subtle, so peaceful, that it starts to change its appearance. But we need a strong mind to see that subtleness of that kind of breath. The mind is not subtle enough. It can't know a subtle breath. The mind is still too coarse. It falls asleep. It doesn't know what to do with a breath that is hardly there. Because you don't need that much oxygen at that level. You don't need to be sitting there. There's hardly any breath left. There's just a very subtle little bit of breath that keeps you alive there. And it's so calm, so peaceful, hardly detectable. So to be able to keep noticing it, to keep making that interesting, to keep up the interest, it's a lot of work. Yeah? So you got to make that breath interesting. You got to make that breath the most important thing in the world. Make that thing something that you know you can't do without. It is the most important thing in your life. One breath. So you can use any skillful means you find helpful to make that breath your best friend, your companion, your constant. I always feel very happy when at some stage in the meditation, I don't even verbalize it at that point anymore, but I just look at the breath, and it's like the breath looks back, and there's this understanding between the two of us that says, you are my constant. It's like, that's all there is. It's just that. It's just that breath. It's everything. Yeah. And everything else can just disappear. Can just bugger off. Because it's irrelevant at that point. Because we're trying to free the mind. And we're talking about freedom. Last night I talked about freedom from emotions. But true freedom is the freedom from anything that is not constant. The freedom from anything that is not really real. And what is real? If it's changing, how can it be real? And it's only when you get to that level of calm and peace that you actually begin to appreciate the truth behind that. If you haven't reached that stage, it's just words. It's just the Ajahn whistling Dixie out of his butthole. It doesn't make any sense. Because you need to have seen it. You need to get to the point where the breath is your constant, is your reality. That's all there is. That's it. It's your best friend. It's your best mate. And then really everything else is put in perspective. Because you know, everything else can go. But if the breath goes, well, you'd be surprised. Even that can go. And we all know it will at one point. What doesn't go is the mind, does it? Where's it going to go? Where's the knowing going to go? The knowing that is still deluded, the knowing that is still knowing with avijja, with ignorance, is going to pick up the next best thing when that body packs up. And according to your karma, that's either another human body or another animal body. If you've done a lot of bad, it's a hell realm body. If you've done a lot of good, it might be a heavenly body. But you just grab onto another body. You're basically grabbing onto another set of 5 hindrances. They're going to keep harassing you in the next round. So, calming those hindrances, or rejecting them, as it says in that whatever title for this retreat, it's actually quite a good way of saying it, because we need to reject them. Rejection means an active way of saying no, isn't it? It's like something comes harassing you, and he just keeps saying no. And he keeps harassing you, and he keeps saying no. And he keeps saying no. Until eventually the mind actually realizes it's better off without the hindrances. But because it's a gradual training, it's not one where we can start with the abandonment of the hindrances. Yeah? I mean, we got one day of retreat. What do you expect? You know, the gradual training starts a lot earlier than that. So the abandonment of the hindrances is pretty much the last thing you do before you attain jhana. So good luck today to all of you to try and get rid of the hindrances this afternoon. But it's not about, you know, trying to get rid of them today. But it's about using that day, that one day, as an opportunity to remind ourselves of how much we are actually a slave to these hindrances, because you will see them coming up. You will see them in the form of tiredness, fatigue, sloth, torpor. You will see them in the form of restlessness, maybe remorse. There will be the doubt, what is right, what is wrong, what is the right way, what is the wrong way, what is wholesome, what is unwholesome. So talk a little bit about them in the talk this afternoon. But I'm not sure what the program's supposed to be. Supposed to do some meditation. So I guess getting on to close to 10:30, I'll give a bit of a guided meditation. Just say a few words for the next sort of 5 or 10 minutes. And then we'll see if we can meditate until lunchtime. So anybody wants to get up, stretch your legs, go to the toilet, you can. But in a couple of minutes then we'll start the meditation. Sometimes it's nice to personify these things. That's why we do talk about Mara every now and again. And people always ask, well, what is Mara? You can call him Mara is like the Mara of the hindrances. It's the Mara of the hindrances, because they are his tools. They are his weapons. As a sutta, it talks about the period in the wake of the Buddha's enlightenment, where Mara comes to threaten him, tempt him, lure him. He tries everything he can, but of course the Buddha didn't give in, otherwise we wouldn't have a Buddha today. But there the Buddha sort of puts Mara in his place by telling him that he is no longer affected by his army. So Mara's army are these hindrances. So let's talk a little bit about them. When we talk about Kama Chanda, I did say this morning, Chanda is the consent, the allowance, the permission. So do we give our mind permission to roam around in that realm of wishing for sensory delight? It's difficult if we don't know anything else. If that's our world that we live in, the world of the body, the world of the senses, then what can we do? We're so conditioned to look for comfort in that world. So sometimes when we meditate, it doesn't feel, it almost doesn't feel right to ignore the body. But in my experience, that's the best way to get good meditation, so completely ignore it. At least the kind of aches and pains, all these things that come up in the body, if we keep following them around, if we keep looking at every itch, every little pain, every little discomfort, and we're looking for the perfect position, the perfect feelings in the body, we're never going to find it. So we got to put effort, like I said this morning, into putting this body in a comfortable position right in the beginning. And I do take a lot of time to do that, setting the body up, making sure I don't have any places where there's tight clothing. I set my spine, like I said, erect. I put my hands in the right posture, put my head, make sure my back is straight. But then I leave the body alone. I just let it be. And then these things, because they are only increasing or growing, if we keep paying attention to them, they will actually fade away. So most of the sensations in the body, they will fade away if we ignore them. Remember I talked about manasikara, attention. So it's what we pay attention to that becomes the object of our consciousness. If we don't pay attention to form, then eye consciousness doesn't arise. If we don't pay attention to sound, ear consciousness doesn't arise. We don't pay attention to smells, tastes, nose and tongue, consciousness doesn't arise. And if we don't pay attention to the physical sensations, then they can also fade away. So what should we pay attention to? We should pay attention to what we set out to pay attention to from the beginning. And that's why at the beginning of the meditation we have to make it very clear what we want to achieve, what we want to do during this next period. We make it clear what is our meditation word, we make it clear that it's the breath that we're trying to watch, and we give the mind instructions. And these instructions we'll remember throughout the meditation. And then whenever the mind goes off, does something it isn't supposed to do, with mindfulness we can bring it back. And that's the job. It's tedious in the beginning, but it's what we have to do, patiently bringing the mind back again and again. And then once the hindrances show up, whether it's sensual desire, we crave for something, we desire something, or it's aversion, something irritating, then we see it for what it is. It's a hindrance. It's not something that we need to indulge in. It arises because of habit, because we've always been trained to be looking for comfort in things that can never really give us comfort. So we stop looking for comfort in that world. And we stop to make that world anything other than it is. Which means also we don't need to be averse to things. Whether it's any condition, whether it's the heat, the cold. In the old days in Thailand it was a lot of creepy crawly things, mosquitoes. Doesn't really matter what it is. You just accept it. And by accepting it, it can disappear. Especially with sound. Sound is something where the Buddha said it's a thorn to meditation. It's an obstacle. So, because we can't really turn that sense off, isn't it? If a noise arises, somebody talks, a radio plays, we hear sound from the street. Because we're sensitive beings, these ears are there, these sounds, they will touch us, they will reach us. And if it's a sound that we don't like, you will find there is this fighting against it. There is the irritation that comes with it. There's that in us which wants to stop it, the aversion, the negativity, the complaining. But the moment you actually accept it, you allow it to be. Even if it's loud music, if it's chatter from the street, whatever it is, the moment you actually accept it, it can just be. And if it can just be, you can take away your interest from that and put it where it belongs, on your meditation object. And then even though there is sound that is supposedly disturbing, because you accepted it, you allowed it to be, because you can't change it anyway. It's not for you to change. So you accept it. The moment you accept it, it can be. And it also can be let go. The mind turns away. And then it becomes a background noise. It becomes something that is no longer a problem. It's no longer something that triggers the hindrance of aversion, negativity. So liking and disliking, those two, for simplification's sake, they are the things that are found in our mind all the time. There's always something we want, there's something we want to get rid of. There's always something we like, and there's something we dislike. And so that liking and disliking, these two, they stand almost representative for all the hindrances. Sometimes they are like the short formula for the 5 hindrances. Because in a sense, all the other hindrances play on this liking and disliking with regard to our experience. And it's that liking and disliking in the mind which doesn't allow us to become peaceful. Because that is what keeps the restlessness going. It keeps us doubting. It keeps us worrying. It keeps us moving. And it keeps us from just being still. So, liking and disliking. How can we do something about it? What is it we can do? We can tell ourselves that these things are conditioned. We can tell ourselves that these things are gross. We can tell ourselves that these things are dependently arisen upon causes, upon conditions, upon nutriment. They arise because of food. They arise because of causes that have already been established. And the Buddha said, what is peaceful, what is sublime, is equanimity. So I use that as an additional reminder to myself. It's a phrase that you find in the last sutta of the Majjhima Nikaya, the middle-length sayings. This is peaceful, this is sublime, and that is equanimity. Before you remind yourself, all that is gross, all that is dependent, all that is conditioned. It is formed, created, made. And as such, it is not worthy of our pursuit. Equanimity is a peaceful state. Equanimity is a happy state. The Buddha calls it the happiness of equanimity. People always wonder with regard to happiness. There's so many levels of happiness when you read the suttas. Because the Buddha is teaching a gradual training, isn't he? So he's telling us where happiness starts and where happiness ends. He tells us that Nibbana is the highest happiness. So how come Nibbana can be the highest happiness when there is not even feeling left anymore? Because happiness is not a feeling. Happiness can be the absence of something. It can be the absence of an irritation. It can be the absence of the hindrances. It can be the absence of even pleasure. So equanimity, because it is also still a feeling on that level, is a higher form of happiness, and is something that we can aspire to. It's a state where the mind is peaceful, where we look on, and because we look on, without a vested interest in what we're seeing, we can actually see the truth. If we look on without equanimity, and what we're looking on with is liking and disliking, and in the end, we only see what we want to see, and we don't see what we don't want to see. And so we keep going round and round, reaffirming our own views and opinions and perceptions, and never breaking free from that conditioned cycle. So we need to put the mind into a state of equanimity. And one way to get it, obviously, is samadhi. But it can also be through our reflection with wisdom upon the things that we experience, seeing them as conditioned, seeing them as gross, dependently arisen, seeing them as impermanent. We know they are, but we don't want to know. We know they're suffering in the end. We don't want to know, because we're looking for happiness. We're looking for permanence. We know we can't control them, and yet we deny that we can't control them, because we want to control them. We want to be in charge. We want to be in control. And the idea that we are not in control is painful to us, because we've been taught from a very early age that we need to be in control. We need to be in charge. We're not in charge. The senses are in charge. Some pleasant form comes into the range of our sight, and the mind wants to run after it. A pleasant sound comes into the range of our ears, and the mind runs after it. A pleasant smell, a pleasant taste comes into the range of nose or tongue, and the mind runs after it. Because the eyes don't want anything, the ears don't want anything, the nose doesn't want anything, the tongue doesn't want anything. It's the untrained mind that wants pleasure from these things. So we keep running after these things, and in the end, we always feel betrayed, because they can't never last. So equanimity is arranged or aroused also through that development of understanding, development of wisdom. So you can see why mindfulness and wisdom work together. The mindfulness is that which tells us what is happening, and the wisdom tells us as to whether it's right or wrong or good or bad, and what we should do with it. And then we make the requisite effort to do something about it. If it is wholesome, we cultivate it and develop it, bring it to fulfillment. If it is unwholesome, we abandon it, we get rid of it. We don't encourage it. But for that we need to know what is wholesome, what is unwholesome, what is right and what is wrong, what is good and what is bad. Because these two extremes do exist. And that's what doubt is all about. Doubting in the Buddhist context, also on the level of the hindrances, is not really knowing what is right and wrong, not really knowing what is good and bad, not really knowing what is wholesome, what is unwholesome. And so we follow out of habit quite often those things that are not wholesome, that are not good for us, or even bad for us. So you can use your wisdom with regard to your experience of everyday life. Whatever you experience, you always should put it to the test. You should look at it and see if it leads towards a turning away, if it leads to calm, to understanding, to a sense of contentment, if it leads to peace, if it's conducive to samadhi, and then we develop it. And if it isn't, then we don't. So, liking and disliking, the first two hindrances, sloth and torpor, restlessness and remorse. I said this morning in the meditation that I try to find in the experience of the moment an aspect that is more peaceful than the others. And to me that's the most useful way of fighting restlessness. If we find we're itchy, we're restless, we don't want to really be here, we don't want to do something else, the mind can't sit still, there's always some thought coming, some desire, whatever it is, a general restlessness. Then you look at that whole experience. You look at the feelings present, the perception, the thoughts, the feelings in the body, feelings in the mind. You look at the whole experience of restlessness, and you see if you cannot find a place in that experience that is less restless, that is more peaceful. Just a tiny little part in that experience that might not be quite so restless. And then you focus your awareness on that, and you develop contentment with that. And then you focus in even more. And so you deliberately bring the mind to peace. There is this sutta where the Buddha sort of gives one method where we're supposed to think like, well, why am I walking if I can stand? And then you stand. And then you think, well, why am I standing if I can sit? So you sit. And then you say, well, why do I sit when I can lie down? So you lie down. So it's like you're deliberately refining the mind. You're deliberately calming the mind. You're taking apart the conditions that make up the present moment. So instead of focusing on the restless aspect of restlessness, which makes you even more restless, or makes you averse to restlessness, which the aversion to restlessness, of course, makes you also more restless. So instead of that, you're looking at, first of all, accepting, this is restlessness. Okay, it's not me, it's not mine, not myself. It's a condition, has arisen, dependent on causes. You reflect like that. And already there's a sense of more equanimity than before, because you're looking at it with mindfulness. You're recognizing a state of mind. And if you can recognize a state of mind as a state of mind, already you know it's not the mind. It's just a state of mind. It's a temporary condition. It's something that has arisen because of causes. It's gross, dependently arisen. This is peaceful. This is sublime. That is equanimity. You keep reminding yourself of the superiority of equanimity. And with that, you can take the mind to a more calm, a more peaceful place. So, I don't know, have you discovered your favorite hindrance this morning during the meditation? Mine was definitely sleepiness. I didn't get that much sleep last night, and got up very early because I did wake up early, so I didn't want to doze around, because I don't like, lying around when I'm already awake. It makes me drowsy, and I don't find it very useful. So usually try and get up and sit meditation. But then we went to this Indian restaurant. We had nice, greasy Indian food. So that was my breakfast this morning. So when I came here, there was already a predisposition for sleepiness in me. But we always kind of know what hindrance is the one that plagues us at any given time. So once you remember that at the beginning of the meditation, already you're putting yourself into a position of advantage, because you know what to expect. I knew it was going to be sleepiness for me, so I was ready. I was waiting. Come on, show me what you can do. Come on, come on. I noticed my nose touched the microphone. So I keep fighting. And then towards the end, actually, I was quite awake. It was quite nice. You keep fighting. You get the benefit from fighting. Don't ever underestimate putting forth effort. Because energy, it comes from putting forth effort. So I did say this morning there's another set of similes the Buddha gives, just for completion's sake, because I did mention them in the little retreat I gave in Wat Ananda, I think it was, and some of you already here who were on that retreat as well. So I mentioned the hindrances. The Buddha said to the first hindrance, it's like being in debt. Remember the simile with the water was a colorful water. Yeah? So sensual desire was supposed to be colored water, you can't see it. But the simile the Buddha gives is sensuality is like being in debt. And I always liked that, because as a teenager, I didn't have much money when I moved out. And it seems I was in debt a lot. Not by much, but it wasn't much money there, and so I spent it quite quickly. And so I borrowed every now and again. And I didn't like that. So I never liked the idea of owing. But sensuality is like that. It's like you get nothing for free. Whatever pleasure you take, it seems you have to pay for it. You pay a price for any pleasure that you take. And so that debt is something that the Buddha used as a simile for sensuality and being in debt. For those who haven't heard my story from when I was a teenager, I used to go to a bar and they had these coasters. You know, the coaster is where you put your beer on, right? Cardboard thing, so you don't make a mess on your table. So anyway, you had these cardboard coasters, and however many beer you drank, a barkeeper would make a line with a pencil. So you have like 5 lines and 4 lines and a cross through as 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, cross 10. All right. So however many beers you drank that evening, at the end of the evening when you wanted to go home, you'd give the barkeeper the coaster and he'd say, okay, there's so much you have to pay. And if you knew the barkeeper well, he'd say, come on, man, just put it on the shelf, I'll pay next time. So if you knew the barkeeper well, he'd put the coaster in the shelf and he could pay the next day, or even the next day, or even the next day. But one of these days, barkeeper would say, give me your money. So there you are. That was my my way of making it interesting for me, or making that simile of the Buddha relevant for me, because I knew that state of being in debt, and I never liked it. And so realizing that we don't get nothing for free is also a way of looking at sensuality. Things never last. Things always end. It's the ending of things that was part of my experience in life. And it was also the part of Luang Por Chah's experience in his life. And so he actually took it to the extreme. He said, well, what I really want to find is things that have a final ending. Because the things that have an end on the level of the sense world will always start up again. So one thing ends and another thing starts. There's one thing coming to an end, you pick up something else. And I was very good at that. When I saw things coming to an end, I'd find something else to interest me, and I'd take up something new. And when that started to fade out, I'd find something else. I'll find a new project, and another project, and another project. It seems in my life I never ever got bored, because I was very good at finding something to do that interests me. But again, whatever I picked up, eventually it ended. My relationships with girlfriends never ended. I wouldn't be sitting here tonight. So that was always a theme for me. And then Luang Por Chah, I liked that when I first read that in his teachings, and he said that I want to find something that really has an end. Because samsara is endless, remember? It's beginningless and endless. And the only way to end samsara is to remove the cause. You can't remove the symptoms. It's the causes we need to remove. And the cause is desire. The cause is craving. A craving out of ignorance for things that end, but never really end permanently. Just end in suffering. And then you got to find something new. So I like that. I like that idea of things coming to an end, final end. And I don't know, but not being in control, being always dependent upon things, was always part of that experience. And the idea of independence, the idea of not having to rely on things that I can't control, was also very appealing. So, and that's what the Buddha promised. He said, if we practice for the ending of desire, then we have freedom from desire, not freedom of desire. I mean, everybody knows, I hope by now, that that's impossible. But freedom from desire, that's where the ending lies. That's where peace lies. And we need to see that in meditation, first of all. We can't expect that kind of wisdom to just arise without having a profoundly calm and peaceful mind. So the second hindrance, the other simile the Buddha gives for these hindrances about anger and hatred, he called it a disease, a sickness. So sensuality is like being in debt. And the opposite of anger and aversion and hatred is like being sick. And it's equally adequate. Remember the boiling water. So being sick is also a state of an affliction. So we want to get rid of that affliction. The third hindrance of sloth and torpor, and the Buddha said, is like being in prison. Because like I said, if you don't fight, that's sloth and torpor, and it locks you in, then you're in that state, and it seems you can't get out. It's like you're locked in that state of sloth, locked in that state of dullness, and you just can't break free. That's why the Buddha said, once you're in there, once you allow the mind to be captured by sloth and torpor, then you're like in prison. And the restlessness, of course, is being a slave. It's like a slave that is always being sent here and sent there, do this, do that, come here, go there, go do that, bring me this. So restlessness is like being a slave. The last one, doubt, it's like being lost in the desert. You got no way of knowing where's north, east, south, west, completely lost, don't know where you're going. It's being lost in the desert. And that's doubt. The doubt of not knowing what is good and bad, right and wrong, wholesome, unwholesome. I said the other day on a retreat that sometimes people think that doubt is with regard to the Buddha or the Dhamma or the Sangha. But because doubt on that level is a universal hindrance, so anyone who is not a Buddhist would not have doubt if it had anything to do with the Buddha. So what it has to do with is just generally what's right and wrong, what's good and bad, what's wholesome and unwholesome. And the only way to really overcome that is by learning the Dhamma, by doing some study, by asking the right question at the right time to the right person. So this afternoon, providing I am the right person, you can ask some questions. Hopefully not so many as they did in Wat Ananda, because it was a bucket of questions, and we went about 1 hour overtime. So on this schedule, I like the idea of having another half an hour of meditation after the questions, so hopefully we don't have to go overtime. Yes, and it's not so easy to find the kind of things that might be useful to say in the context of this very short sort of retreat. Most of you, I reckon, are meditators anyway. So, but maybe we can expand that Q&A session so that I can hopefully answer some of your personal questions. But for the time being, perhaps I can talk a little bit about the attitude behind the meditation. And because experience is always partly of the things we can't control, that come from the outside, or the inside, or whatever. Yeah? But then there's also the mind with which we experience. There's the attitude with which we look upon life, or the attitude with which we look upon experience. And that attitude, it changes. And that's what we call the state of the mind. If the state of the mind, which, like I said this morning, consists of perceptions and feelings, then we have to look at these perceptions and feelings that make up our attitude towards what we are experiencing, so that we can actually separate how much we actually contribute or add to the experience. Let's take an example like a painful feeling. A painful feeling in the body is just that. It's a painful feeling. But then, how do you experience that? Which brings us back to, again, the hindrances. Are you experiencing it with desire, with aversion, with dullness, with restlessness, with doubt? Because these things will be there. And these things, they are made up of your feelings and perceptions. So, what we can change in experiencing life is the attitude. So we can try and sit back and separate what actually is beyond our control and how much we actually add to the experience through our own liking and disliking, whatever. And that's what a skillful meditator or skillful practitioner does. He's no longer so driven by these hindrances on the level of the attitude with which he watches, because he knows that's where I can make a change. If I arouse a sense of humor, for instance, like I can laugh about something, then immediately it has an effect on the situation. Or if I experience, say, a negative emotion, and I immediately see the danger in that negative emotion, that changes the situation. The danger of giving in is less if I see the danger. Or I can reflect upon the impermanence, that this will change. And the reason we suffer, the reason we desire, the reason we experience aversion is usually because impermanence doesn't come into the equation at that moment. As soon as we bring the reality of impermanence into the situation changes. Because the perspective that it gives us, the perspective of change, it takes away that permanence. Like the permanence of a negative thing is what makes us suffer. And it's also the permanence of not attaining what you want that makes you suffer. So impermanence and the fact that these things will end is also a way of changing the attitude with which you watch, experience. But I find sometimes seeing the humorous side of it helps me. Just taking the mickey out of something. Not seeing it, not being so serious. So finding the right attitude is half your meditation, really. Because with that, you take away the fuel for those hindrances. And then they just fade out. And unless you give in to sloth and torpor, eventually the mind starts to brighten up. And that's when joy comes into the mix. Because a high energy state brings joy, brings happiness. If the mind is dry, there's no happiness there, it really means that there's no energy. So we need to find a way of energizing the mind, finding a way of rousing the mind. And inspiration in the things that we have faith in is a good way of doing that. So you reflect on the things that make you happy. You deliberately look for something that makes you happy. If you are a faithful Buddhist who loves the teaching of the Buddha, you think of some of your favorite teachings, some of the teachings that have helped you in your life, and some of the quotes from some of these great monks or from the Buddha himself. Sometimes it's good to learn these things by heart. You've got some chantings, some good phrases from the chantings, or something like that, reciting them. Something that uplifts the mind, something that makes you happy. Because that also brings energy. So energy is what we need. A good cup of coffee helps, but it's not enough. That's also impermanent. Caffeine wears off. So I did say this morning that a breath, because it's one way of looking at the breath is seeing it as a part of the elements, part of the body. So that's when we want to go into the direction of wisdom. We don't just use the breath, as it were, to lull ourselves into a state of peacefulness. But we try to investigate the breath as almost like with a curiosity, with a sense of wanting to find out more about it. And it's that curiosity, that interest, that brings up joy as well. If you have a wholesome interest in something, it brings up a sense of excitement. It's something that you're getting thrilled. You're thrilled about the way that the breath begins to appear when it changes in meditation. It's no longer this boring breath going in and out, but it becomes something very interesting, something very special. It becomes an element. It becomes nature. It becomes something that, by allowing it to be what it really is, rather than appropriating it as yourself or your own, you're allowing the possibility that there is something to be seen in that breath that you haven't seen before. It's like the moment we give in to the illusion of understanding or the illusion of knowing, we're already lost. It's like we have to always assume that there's more to know, there's more to see, there's more to gain, there's more to attain, there's more to realize than what we have realized. And that keeps the curiosity going, it keeps the interest going. And when the mind then becomes sharp and concentrated, and mindfulness becomes strong, then you actually have the opportunity to see the things you haven't seen before. And then the breath becomes a vehicle for developing wisdom, not just a vehicle for attaining calm. Because if you really manage to see the breath as, I said this morning, as a bodily formation, you're seeing non-self. Essentially, that's what you're doing. I mean, you're seeing into the heart of the Buddhist teaching. Because you're seeing something that you always assumed was yours as part of nature. And as such, you can let it go. Because you don't appropriate nature. You just allow it to be what it is. And that's also when the mind can be free. Because as long as the mind is still holding on to nature, claiming nature, trying to control nature, trying to manipulate it, and always being frustrated because it can't be done, that's the dilemma of our human state, the ignorant human state. But as soon as we begin to see that what we're actually holding on to is nature, we're actually holding on to are elements of nature. Once we really see that, then letting go can happen. Remember, letting go is something that happens when you see the truth. It's not something you can do. Nobody can let go. It's impossible. You can't let go from a point of willpower. Letting go is something that happens because you see the truth. You see the reality. The mind lets go automatically. And the moment you see that breath of yours as not yours, but as nature, as an element of nature, and that element of nature is free, and so is the mind. It can lead to quite deep, profound insight. But on the level of the Anapanasati Sutta, at that stage, at the very least, if it's true insight, it should lead to a lot of happiness. Because the next stage in the meditation, after calming the bodily formation, after calming the breath, the end of the first tetrad, the Buddha said, breathing in, I shall experience happiness or rapture and happiness. The reason that at that stage these things come into the mix is because you've let go of a lot of burdens. You let go of the burden of assuming the breath to be yours. You realize the breath is a formation, it's part of nature. You let it go. You let go of a big burden. And that triggers joy. That understanding triggers happiness. And that's when the meditation really takes off. Because, like I said, that joy and happiness is what really we call the glue, what keeps you glued to this calm, happiness and peace. Otherwise, the state is too unstable. Without the joy, there's always restlessness around the corner. It drags you out. There's always sloth and torpor around the corner, put you to sleep. There's always liking and disliking around the corner, and take you out of contentment. And there's always doubt around the corner, to make you not really know what's right and wrong. So looking upon these hindrances, learning them, getting to know them, getting to know the antidote, perhaps remembering the similes, seeing them in your own mind, finding ways and means, skillful means to abandon them. And that's our job, it's our practice. And it's not an easy one, but it's the only one, as I keep saying, that is really worth it. Everything else doesn't have an end, at least not a final end. There's always the end that ends in suffering. And then it starts all over again. Samsara. So anyway, that's a bit of an after the meal rambler for you here today. So hopefully there's enough in there to get you going for the next hour in your meditation. And then we'll have the questions at about 3:30 roughly. Was there a basket with people for, with questions, or is it questions from the floor? Like that? Did you put out a basket for questions? Do you put on a piece of paper? No.
No, he didn't put up.
He didn't?
Yeah.
Huh?
No, he didn't put out a basket.
Okay.
So,
I like that. It's sort of in a sense, it gives everybody the opportunity. Sometimes there's some people who are a bit shy asking questions. So just as a suggestion, you can, in the future, if you do retreats, I always had good results with that. People are able to put their questions on paper. Sometimes it helps clarify the question. But anyway, so we'll start with anyone who has a question without paper.
those who are shy, Sis Jenny bringing up the pen and paper for you.
Well, it's a bit late now, but
Still can write.
Ajahn, good afternoon. Can I just ask you if it's suitable for us to practice 𝐌𝐞𝐲's meditation at the meditation center?
sorry, to do what? 𝐌𝐞𝐲?
Yeah,
Is that what you said?
is it suitable for us to go for the retreats at 𝐿𝐴𝐚𝐡𝐧's meditation centers?
I mean,
Thank you,
who am
Ajahn.
I to say yes or no? I mean, it's I mean, anybody who's been to 𝐴𝐴𝐚𝐡𝐧 and his retreats. Personally, I've done them myself when I was a monk already. Though first one I did was on the pilgrimage when I went to India. I did a few. I mean, it's a technique. Like many other techniques, they have their pros and cons. Techniques are always as good as, one, as good as the person who practices them, but also they're only as good as your temperament is suitable to that particular technique. It's like any technique works for whoever comes up with that technique. That's really what it is, isn't it? So my techniques, I mean, I mentioned them to you, or at least to some on the other retreats, I can't remember, but they're only good for me. So I can mention them as my skillful means that I develop for myself. As to whether they work for you is for you to find out yourself. I mean, the pros at 𝐴𝐴𝐚𝐡𝐧's retreats, one is good sila. It's based on donations, so that's good. It's a technique that, I mean, they call it vipassana, which is of course a bit funny because it's a classical samatha method in keeping the mind in a confined area, which is the idea of watching sensations throughout the body. It's a classical samatha technique. I don't know why it's supposed to be vipassana, but there's a few things which are a bit strange. So in terms of view, there's some wrong view there with regard to sankhara and certain things. But if you understand the Buddhist teaching, that's what I always tell people. If you have a good understanding, a good foundation in the Dhamma, you read the suttas, and you read some of these teachers who have really practiced to the end, then you got nothing to fear from any technique. You do it as you allow it to help you as much as it can help you, but you're not confused or confounded by the parts of it that are wrong. So I mean, I started off with a Hindu technique, repeating a mantra, so something that was quite in the 70s, 80s, transcendental meditation, Maharishi. I mean, that was a cult. But it was, I mean, as far as the technique is concerned, repeating a mantra to make the mind peaceful was brilliant. Some of the best meditations doing that. I mean, that got me into meditation. Whether you, I mean, I never got interested in the culty part of it. I just used the mantra and did it for many years, and it was found it very beneficial. But of course, yeah, there were others who got into the culty side of it and got swept away by that. So, I mean, the Buddha is teaching an eightfold path. I keep telling people that's a holistic way of practicing, because it affects every part of our life, and as such, it's the most direct way to liberation. So, like I said, understand the Buddhist teaching, and then you can benefit from going to different retreats. And sometimes you can just go there and do your own thing. Nobody can look into your head when you're meditating. Nobody knows what you're doing there. If you just like the space and the time, and the food. Okay, anyone else? Questions?
Ajahn, I'm a beginner in meditation, so this question could be very simple. So apologies. I struggle with meditation, in just staying in meditation. So when is it, when I'm sitting down, when is it counterproductive to continue? I find my mind keep drifting, and I try the technique you mentioned about, you catch your mind and you watch the breath again. But when does it's just counterproductive, I should just stop. And then try another day. Thank you.
I don't know whether it can be counterproductive, but it's like with everything we learn, with everything we train in, we have to know the right amount. It's like you can overindulge in something, and you're right. I mean, if you're just sitting there putting in time, but you find you're actually not actually doing the work, then maybe it's time to give it a rest, give it a break. Yeah? Which is why it is good, in my opinion, to set a particular time. Find out for yourself how much is good for you at this stage. I mean, I noticed, was it the other day, I think last night, they were saying, 10 minutes of meditation. I mean, it's about as short as it gets. So you can start with that. A friend of mine started like that. And then he did 15, 20, 30, 40, 45, 50. And now he sits for an hour. So you can do that. Just do 10 minutes, but then give it everything you got. Don't hold back. And then after 10 minutes, 15 minutes, you do something else. But you do that continuously, regularly, every day, come what may. And that's where the benefits come in. It's like you get to know your mind by doing the work, even if you don't want to do the work. Because then you see the hindrances, then you see the obstacles, then you see the tendencies, and you see your mind in different moods, under different conditions. Yeah? And then you get a better idea of because you keep looking at your mind every day at a particular time, you really get to know yourself. And that's the whole point of it. So that's what I recommend, is do less time, like less long, but do it regularly. Also find out what's a good time for you. Are you a morning person? Is it good for you to get up, get dressed, wash yourself, have a cup of coffee, whatever, and then meditate before the day begins to give it a good start? Or are you someone who prefers to get everything out of the way? In the evening, everybody is quiet down, you get your peace and quiet then. So find out what's a good time for you, and then make use of that time, and then find a way of doing it continuously, so you actually get to know. Because you can't expect, nobody can expect miracles from meditation if we are beginners. I mean, I struggled for years. I mean, I didn't. I mean, the way I'm sitting here, I mean, that's 37 years. I mean, when I started, my knees were at my ears. So, just give it time. Okay?
Hi, Ajahn. Thank you for coming down to Singapore. I have a question about faith and belief in the Buddha in general. So I've been meditating and I've been reading suttas and, starting to get indoctrinated into the religion. And as I was meditating in my mother-in-law's house, so she's Christian, right? And then she saw me meditating and then she was quite concerned. So she saw me this part of the Bible that says, if you meditate, the evil spirits are going to possess you. And then, so before my meditation was quite peaceful. And after she said that, a few meditations, even though I kind of knew it wasn't supposed to be true, but the doubt just arose in my mind that, this person is saying that the spirit is going to possess me. And my mother-in-law is a very kind person, right? The attribute seems quite okay, and she fully believes in what the Bible says, just like what I fully believe in what the Sutta says as well. So two people fully believe in what they think is right. And I somehow have this, doubt that actually, am I really believing the right thing? How should I overcome this?
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, it's a very common, that particular phrase you were there quoting, it's a misquote, and it's often used to discredit meditation. But what it really means is, if we allow the mind to be empty of work, empty of a meaningful thing, empty of something good, essentially, something wholesome. Yeah. If you let the mind just go empty, run on empty, or how would you translate it? I don't really know. Let me put it the other way, the opposite. As long as you have something wholesome that you put into the mind, which is what we're trying to do with meditation, yeah, then the evil, unwholesome states, they can't take hold. But if you allow the mind to run on automatic, or if you allow the mind to just indulge in its habits, but essentially you're not actually working, you're not actually doing something with your mind, you're not training it, then these evil, unwholesome states are able to overwhelm you. But if you keep mindful watch at the mind, if you guard the mind, which is what meditation is, then you're actually looking after your mind. You're protecting your mind. You're protecting your mind by giving it a wholesome job, a wholesome task, which is what a meditation object is. To repeating Buddho, or to watching the breath, or to develop loving kindness or compassion, or any meditation object that you use, is a wholesome, skillful way of giving the mind a meaningful task, giving the mind a meaningful work. And then, if you do that, then the evil, unwholesome states, which are the hindrances that we have just been talking about, they can't overwhelm you. Whereas if you allow the mind to just run wild, without looking after it, that's when greed enters your mind. That's when hatred enters your mind. That's when sloth and torpor and drowsiness enter your mind. That's when restlessness or even remorse enters your mind. That's when doubt enters the mind. So what they call is the same thing that we call Mara, the evil one. And like I said this morning, the hindrances are the forces. They are Mara's forces. They're Mara's troops. So they can enter the mind if we don't look after it. So that's how I understand that. But sometimes, I don't know what they're really so concerned about, or what their problem is, because if they really know their own religion, if they actually knew their own religion, they knew that in those times when Christianity was very strong and the mystical traditions were still flourishing, whether it's the Desert Fathers or any of these great Christian mystics that were really practicing and trying to develop their mind. I mean, they were doing a lot of meditation. So it's just that people sometimes they don't know their own religion very well, and then I think it's not really fair to try to discredit another religion which they know even less. You know, people, like I said this morning also, people are always afraid of things they don't understand. So just be kind to your mom or your mother-in-law and just sort of try to accommodate her. But sometimes it's good to know your own ways, your own teachings, and then sometimes if you find the right time and place, maybe you can explain, and maybe she'll understand.
Thank you, Ajahn. We have one from
We got one. Last week I got a whole bucket full. Okay, the Buddha said we need to find out ourselves on his teachings. Could you please share how monastic monks practice these explorations? So that's the problem with people, questions on a piece of paper. If I don't understand a question, can't answer it. So the Buddha said we need to find out ourselves on his teaching.
I think for ourselves.
Okay, I get it, okay. So the Buddha said we need to find out for ourselves. I assume it means we need to find out the truth for ourselves, as nobody can do it for us. And nobody can come with a magic wand and say, bing, you're enlightened now. So we got to do the work ourselves. So could you please share how monastic monks practice these explorations? Okay, well, so if I understand it correctly, then the question is, well, how do we find out for ourselves? So how do, I mean, the Buddha practiced, or the Buddha taught a gradual training. So that's what we need to understand. That's why it's difficult coming in here and teaching a retreat which is supposed to deal with the hindrances in one day. Because obviously it's quite a lot, you know, to even, if you've never, some of you may have never heard about them, will find it very difficult. So to really explore the Buddha's teachings to the point of understanding them for ourselves, which is obviously the whole point of it, why the Buddha taught. And the Buddha taught us to know and see for ourselves. And that was his promise. He said anybody who practices, he said in the end for 7 days properly, or if you started with 7 years, 7 months, 7 weeks, 7 days, and you said, well, let alone 7 days, 1 day and 1 night, but really properly, you should be able to do it. But the thing is, we don't do it properly, because we don't start at the beginning sometimes, and it's like you're finding out the beginnings of the gradual training. So what I would really recommend to you is to find out those teachings in the suttas, and so you don't have to read all of them, but find out all the teachings the Buddha gives on the gradual training. And then you have a progressive teaching there where you can see how cause and effect works. If you put in certain causes, there are certain results. It's like one of my favorite similes is that if you really have a certain foundation, then you don't need to make the wish, oh, may the next step occur, because the next step will occur naturally. If you reach that step, you won't have to make a determination or a wish, oh, may I reach the next stage, because the next stage will occur. The thing is, we need to do the first things first. So if you look at the practice in short, in terms of dana, sila, bhavana, or you look at it in terms of sila, samadhi, panya, then already there you have a gradual training. Or you take the whole Eightfold Path, you start with right view. If you use dana, sila, bhavana, then you have dana, which means generosity, sila means virtue, and bhavana means cultivation, development. So the Buddha said to the monks that don't be afraid of giving, don't be afraid of sharing, don't be afraid of making merit. Because even for monks, that's a good foundation. So giving, sharing, helping others, and then developing your virtue. And then you have a strong foundation to build on. When you then start developing meditation, there is that sense of non-remorse. There's already a sense of non-remorse, which gives gladness, which gives joy, which gives happiness, which gives contentment. So you got all the right foundations for meditation to really take off. So that's if your sila is good. You got the foundation. And then the other way is sila, samadhi, panya. Now you have to take the sila as a stepping stone, your virtue. And based on that virtue, you develop the meditation. And on the strength and the stability of your mind, you get deep insight. Like I said this morning, you can look into that body of water. You can dive down to the depths of the ocean. When the ocean is clear, when the water is clear. But you got to clear the water first. You got to get rid of the hindrances, which is the job of samadhi. So then you could look at the Eightfold Path. It starts with right view. If you have wrong view, everything else is wrong. Everything you do is wrong. You got wrong view, you got wrong thought, wrong thinking, wrong speech, wrong action, wrong livelihood, wrong effort, wrong meditation, wrong mindfulness, wrong concentration. Everything's wrong. So find out what right view is. What the Buddha called right view on the level of not super mundane right view, which is knowing the Four Noble Truths, but right view on the level of understanding or believing in karma, cause and effect on the level of action, and believe in rebirth, and believe in mother and father as our parents who we owe a debt of gratitude towards, that our actions have consequences, that giving bears fruit, generosity bears fruit, things like that. So you develop right view, then the way you think is affected by that view. And the way you perceive is affected by that view. Remember that cycle, the vicious cycle of views, perceptions and thoughts? Whatever your views are like, that way you perceive the world. If you're a Christian, you see God working in mysterious ways. If you don't believe in God, you don't see God working in everything, because you see something else. It doesn't matter. Whatever your view is, that's how you perceive the world. Your perceptions are based in your views. So if your views are wrong, your perceptions are wrong, your thoughts are wrong. And from that, everything else is wrong. So establishing right view is one of the most crucial parts to being able to put this teaching of the Buddha into practice and exploring it and developing it. But you have to make your own experiences. You have to see it for yourself, and that's why this question is spot on. You have to see it for yourself. You have to see how cause and effect actually works, how actions lead to consequences. If you see that, you're going to start taking responsibility for your actions. And that will change your life. Anyway, you got to do it. So faith is good. Yeah? It's good to have faith. We need it because faith gives rise to energy. If you have faith in what you're doing, you put effort into it. If you don't have faith, you don't put effort into it. But you can only rely on faith so much. You've got to put enough effort in to see the results for yourself, which are mindfulness and concentration and wisdom. So those spiritual faculties, they work with each other. Faith, energy, mindfulness, concentration and wisdom.
Thank you, Ajahn, for conducting the retreat here. My question is, what do you do when there's a family member who frequently engages in harsh speech against the rest of the family? Then it's very distressing to see. So how do you deal with that?
Well, one of the ways to deal with it skillfully is first of all to know that that person is creating his own karma. So it's like you're not responsible. You can't feel guilty for anyone else. It's just what somebody has been conditioned in a particular way that he engages in harsh speech. Then they're creating karma. So usually people who act like that are also not very amenable to being told. So that's where the problem gets compounded. If you have someone like that, you really need to be patient and find him or her at a time where they're amenable to a conversation in a calm, peaceful manner. And sometimes to wait for that opportunity might take a long time, because you may not see them all the time, you may only see them at certain times. Sometimes when you see them, they're already agitated, they're already not in a good space. So finding that time, but it's worth it. And the thing is, you have to also ask yourself, well, is it worth it? Is it someone you care a lot about? Is it someone you really want to help? And then you got to assess, well, can I help them? Is there a way of helping them? But, for yourself, because sometimes we have to act in their presence, make sure you maintain your own calm. Make sure you don't allow their anger or their harshness to affect you. And in that sense, you can actually use it as a challenge for your own practice, which is not a bad thing. Don't try to see it as a bad thing. It's just a thing. It's what it is. And it's not your problem. It's not your fault. It's not even their fault, in the sense that for them it's also conditioned. If they had been conditioned in other ways, they wouldn't be like that. So also have a sense of compassion, because people like that, and they're not usually very much liked by other people. So you can also develop a sense of compassion and kindness, because you realize, well, they're not creating the best conditions for themselves to be liked by other people. But if you really have a care for that person and you want to help, then, like I said, find a way where they are peaceful, where you are in a good space, and try to reason with them in that way, and try to explain how they're creating, well, basically suffering for themselves and people around them. It's difficult.
Thank you, Ajahn. Any more questions?
Thank you, Ajahn, for your teaching. Just as a follow-up to your previous answer on you have to find for yourself the meaning of cause and effect. Could you please elaborate on this?
Sorry? Cause and effect? What was the question?
You said you have to find out for yourself the meaning of cause and effect.
Yes?
Could you please elaborate on how we find out?
Okay.
Thank you.
Well, the thing is, we are acting all the time, yeah. But we rarely have enough mindfulness or patience or even wisdom to see how our actions actually affect ourselves and other people around us. So making a determination to look at the effects of certain actions will help you to be more aware of the consequences of your actions. So say you go into a particular situation, yeah, and prior to that you make a determination, okay, the way I'm trying to act in a particular way, and I'm going to see how that actually affects myself, how that affects the situation, other people, and then you have that clarity, and then you're more aware of the consequences. You see the consequences better. But generally making an aspiration to understand that will also, of course, also help. Yeah? Because the fact is that all our actions have consequences. It's just that we're not necessarily always aware of the consequences. And not all consequences are immediate. Yeah? Some of the consequences only come later on. So when the Buddha talked about kamma, kamma basically means action. Kammati, the infinitive of kamma, means to do, to act. So our actions have consequences, and if we make that aspiration to find that out, if we keep telling ourselves that, then we can actually observe that also in other people. When people act in certain ways, sometimes it's easier to see the consequences of other people's actions. But our own actions, of course, are paramount, because that's... Kamma, sometimes people say we have bad kamma or good kamma. Technically it's wrong. What we have is bad vipaka, which means consequence, a result. Vipaka is the fruit, and kamma is the action. So technically when people say, oh, I got bad kamma, or he's got good kamma, or she's got good kamma, what they really mean is they got good vipaka, because they created good actions in the past. They have acted in ways that produced good, skillful, wholesome consequences. And I really encourage people to try it out on the level of speech. Yeah, people always talk about noble silence. They go on these retreats, and then they say, "Oh, I'm going to keep noble silence." There's nothing noble about not talking, because it's easy. It's easy, especially in the context of a retreat. It's easy. You make a determination not to speak, and you don't speak. That's it. You don't even have to speak because nobody's asking you anything. What's difficult is to only speak when you're asked. That's a tough one. So you make a determination for one day, or if you can't do it the whole day, half a day, yeah, for that, these next so and so many hours, I'm only going to open my mouth if somebody asks me to. You know why that is a brilliant practice? Because it really shows you this insidious desire to need to talk. That need to put your 2 cents worth into the mix when nobody asked you to. It's brilliant. It really shows you your intentions. Because if you become aware of your intentions, you're also likely to become more aware of your motivations. Yeah? Because the intention is what you're aiming at. The motivation is where you're coming from. So understanding that gives you a profound insight into karma, into action, into cause and effect. Like so find your own little areas where you can explore that, how actions have consequences.
Thank you, Ajahn. 2 more there.
Hello, Ajahn. I would like to ask for your opinion. So in us walking the path to awakening, is it better to aspire to be reborn back into the human realm or to the Deva realm or even to Pure Land? Thank you.
I wouldn't put a destination on it so much. I would make the determination so that you will meet with the Dhamma, with the true Dhamma, with the true teaching again in the future. So when you make a determination, say at night, before you go to bed or whatever you do, may the merit that I have accumulated through my actions, body, speech and mind, whether it's a particular action or whether it's a retreat you want to dedicate or is it whether general, it doesn't matter. May through the actions, through the merit that I've accumulated, may I always meet with the Dhamma of the Buddha again, so I can keep practicing until I reach the final goal. So that's how I would word it, rather than, you know, in 30, 40 years, I think you don't want to come back to this world. It's not going to be a nice place. It's already not a nice place. Now, we were pretty lucky. It's still reasonably nice for most of us. Yeah? But who knows? It might not be such a nice place in 50 years. So, because there might not be any Dhamma around. Who knows? Being born in a Deva realm is no guarantee. You may be born around heedless Devas, who just enjoy sense pleasures. You may be around good Devas who discuss the Dhamma. I mean, there's lots of Devas who attained enlightenment during the time of the Buddha when he taught them. I remember the Buddha was teacher of gods and humans. That's what we're chanting. So he was teaching Devas. So there are those around in the heavenly worlds who are interested in Dhamma. Yeah. But that I wouldn't phrase it like that. Yeah, I'd phrase it in a way that you become, you meet with the Dhamma again. You meet with the teachings. You can keep practicing. Okay, there was another question there. Kim? Yeah.
Ajahn, thank you for coming to Singapore these many years to share with us your wisdom and your experiences. My question is, about rupa. Can you please explain again, like what you did the other day at the other retreat?
Rupa.
Yes.
Okay, not so sure.
I-
Give me a few more hints. What was that talking about? Rupa in the sense of
Rupa nama. Nama rupa. The rupa part of nama.
the rupa.
nama. Yeah.
Okay.
And because I've been trying to understand, for me, rupa always has a nama component to make sense of it. It's just sense data coming in, and
Right.
and whatever then the mind perceives and acts on, but the source of it has come from rupa, like the hardness or the
Oh, okay.
yeah. So the
Okay, just to clarify, rupa means form. Yeah, it doesn't mean body. Yeah? So form, say smell is form, sound is form, taste is form, touch is form. So form is anything to do with sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch. So the form realm, well, because we were just talking about different realms, it'd be nice to talk about that. So the form realm is the realm of jhana, the four jhanas. They are the form realms. Then you have the kama loka, which is the realm of sensuality, which is anything below the Brahma world, all the way up to the highest heaven world. And then you got the arupa loka, which is the formless realms, which starts with infinite space, infinite consciousness, nothingness, neither perception nor non-perception. So these are the non-form realms. So those in terms of planes of existence. Yeah? Now, to me, what was always confounding was why the samadhi realm, or why the jhanas were called form jhanas. Yeah? And the answer lies in the fact that the indriya, the sense faculties, the faculty of sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch, still exist in the realm of form, which means all the way up to the fourth jhana, there is still the sense faculties are still present, which means the way you experience that form realm on the level of these deep meditations is affected by the sense faculties. So we need to understand that when we try to understand form, that is not just the physical four elements, the coarse material four elements like this body, yeah. But all the other planes of existence, yeah, they also have these sense faculties. So you have the heavenly beings. Yeah? There's also form, even though they call the sense sphere realm or the karma realm loka. There's also on the level of form also exists there, but it's a fine material form. So they don't have those coarse bodies. Yeah? Now you were talking about nama and rupa. Yeah? On that level, we're talking about the content of awareness, the content of consciousness. Because consciousness only makes sense to us if we are conscious of something. And so when the Buddha uses the word consciousness, he uses it in a way to describe the 6 classes of consciousness. He uses it to describe 6 ways of being conscious. You can have eye consciousness, ear consciousness, nose consciousness, tongue consciousness, body consciousness, and you can have mind consciousness. So there are 6 classes of consciousness. And that the Buddha does to differentiate or to show that consciousness in and of itself doesn't, there's a component missing. You can't have consciousness without being conscious of something, or so it seems. Now people always ask, well, what's the difference between the mind and consciousness? Because in Western society, in our society, the word consciousness is widely known. Everybody talks about consciousness. They're talking about AI being conscious, which is preposterous. Because it can never, you cannot spawn consciousness, you cannot create consciousness. Consciousness is, because of bhava. Consciousness is. It's not something you can create. So the only thing that could possibly happen, I always say jokingly, I think I did on the retreat, is that you have some devas in some heaven realm who like a particular robot, and then they say, oh, let's check it out, let's go in there. So they take birth in that machine, in that robot, because they like it. It's a cool robot, you know. Rather than being born into some other stupid body that can't do as much as the robot can. But that the robot actually spawns consciousness, that's ridiculous. It doesn't work. So anyway, if we understand that, then the question is, well, what is the difference between consciousness and mind? Or what's the difference between heart and mind, or heart and consciousness? And I always try to, point to the fact that all these ways of talking about the mind, consciousness, the heart, they all have in common is that ability to be aware, awareness. You're aware of sight. Because the eyes are not aware. The eyes don't see anything. It's the mind that is aware. And when the mind is aware of form, it's called eye consciousness. So it's the mind or the consciousness, if you like. When we talk about the state of mind, or we talk about the quality of our heart, what's the difference between mind and heart? Everybody knows in most Asian cultures, heart and mind are synonymous. So is consciousness, really. It's just that the Buddha used these different words to point at this experience of knowing from a different perspective. That's how I understand it. People might disagree or whatever, Well, again, it's something we have to find out for ourselves. So, but when we then look at the content of consciousness, in other words, at nama-rupa, is there anything in nama-rupa which is permanent? No. Is that which is impermanent happiness or suffering? It's suffering. Is that what is impermanent, subject to change, suffering, worthy of calling me, mine, or self? No. So it means anything that we can be conscious of falls in the realm of dukkha, falls in the realm of suffering, ultimately, falls in the realm of formations. And again, formations are 𝑏𝒆 sankhara samatha. The stilling of all formations is nibbana. So we need to still, quell, calm, let go, abandon everything that we can be conscious of. Because all that we can be conscious of is impermanent, is suffering, is non-self. I mean, that's the awful truth, isn't it? So the fact then is, or the question that remains, when the Buddha talks about the liberation of the mind, or the liberation of the heart, what are we liberating here? And so, it's something that even monks quarrel about, if they haven't understood it yet. Because it's a tricky one. On the one hand, consciousness without being conscious of something doesn't make sense. On the other hand, you're supposed to liberate the mind. And if mind and consciousness are the ability to know, what does that mean? So, but like I tried to say this morning, in the context of dealing with the hindrances, is we can always know these hindrances if we're mindful. And the fact that we can know them means that we are not the hindrance. We don't need to take them on as me, mine, or self. We don't need to develop more aversion towards aversion. Yeah? We need to see them for what they are and allow them to just fade out by not fueling them. And in turn, by ending them, we stop fueling ignorance. Because like I said, the hindrances are what fuels and sustains avijja, ignorance. So I think we can't go wrong if we cultivate that ability to know, that quality of awareness on the level of mindfulness, wherever. And if it turns out in the end to be something we didn't expect, it's okay. But that's what. But this question was, we have to figure it out for ourselves. Nobody can do it for us. We can only use the skillful means and the tools that we're given. Yeah. But if we're like the chicken who goes running around, pock, 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 who doesn't keep sitting on her eggs, and she keeps wishing, oh, may my chicks hatch safely and may they be healthy. No, the farmer is going to come and make an omelette from her eggs. But if she keeps sitting on her eggs with her butt, even if she doesn't wish, oh, may my chicks hatch safely, they will hatch because she keeps sitting on her eggs like she's supposed to. And that's with our practice. If we keep doing the job, if we keep doing the practice, we don't need to wish. The things will happen. But we got to put in the work, and we got to put in the work on the level that we need to do it for ourselves. So we have to find out, where are we? Where's our mind? Where's our practice? Do we practice enough sense restraint? Do we practice moderation in eating? Do we practice wakefulness? Do we practice mindfulness and clear comprehension? Do we practice the abandonment of the hindrances? Do we practice samadhi? Do we practice wisdom? So it's like looking at the gradual training and looking at the Eightfold Path and seeing it as a holistic approach to our life. Because we're talking about life here. We're not talking about some hypothetical thing. We're talking about of flesh and blood. It's our life we're dealing with. So you want to give your life into the hands of someone who doesn't know. But to give yourself to the Buddha, I don't think we can go wrong. The fact that the Buddha pretty clearly said that outside of his dispensation, there's no awakening. Why is that? Because there's no Eightfold Path. Even the first factor of right view, if that's missing, you miss the yeast. The cake will never happen, So it doesn't mean we can't look to other traditions, to other teachers, other things, or like somebody was asking about 𝐏𝐞𝐻𝐢, they're all techniques, We can use them, and if they're helpful, we can use them skillfully. But I think our duty, if we call ourselves Buddhists, is to actually find out, first of all, what the Buddha taught. and then take it from there. Yes, two more, maybe one more over there. First. Already 5 minutes over time, so maybe last
Sorry,
question.
I have two questions. Maybe it could be quick. But the first...
Just one.
Okay. The first one relates to what you talked about just now on noble silence. You said that we should practice not speaking for a day. But somehow
Not speaking for a day, but only speaking when you're asked.
only speak,
If somebody talks to you, you politely answer every question they ask. But if they don't stop asking, you stop talking.
okay, right. I was thinking that maybe it's not just not waiting, but it's more like in the mind, what goes on in the mind. So you can, maybe you're not talking, you don't speak, but your mind, what it goes. Because like Dhammapada 1.
Well, you will see the intention to speak, your thoughts more clearly when you make a determination to only speak when other people are asking you. Because then you actually see the intention, the impulse, but you can't follow it. And that's frustrating. But it's only through that frustration that you actually begin to see it. If you can say anything that comes to your mind, you don't even notice that you're talking a lot. But if you make a determination to only actually talk when somebody asks you to, or asks you a question, yeah, then you see the intention, but you can't follow it. Because you can't follow it, you see it even more clearly.
But I also think that when you're not being spoken to, when you are alone, you also have to be mindful what's going on in your mind. Because if you were also speaking to yourself, you could be answering back. And when someone else asks you 10 hours later, you might just end up bursting out like that. So, mindfulness is still important then, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Then that's why my next question was actually, if you want to answer, difference between yoniso manasikara and sati sampajana.
Between what?
Yoniso manasikara and sati sampajana.
Yoniso manasikara. Manasikara is the work of the mind, and yoniso means the work of the mind that traces things back to the source. The yoni is the womb, yeah, where child is conceived. So the yoniso means and mana is the mind, kara is the same as kamati. So yoniso manasikara means literally means the work of the mind, yeah, that traces things back to the source, where all this is coming from. Yeah. So you go back to the origin, to the source, to the place where all this comes from, which is essentially avijja. Yeah. So that's what we're doing. Yoniso manasikara traces our experience back to where it originates, yeah, where it comes from. Yeah, that's yoniso manasikara. And then sati sampajanya, is that the word you mean? Sati means mindfulness, if you like the translation, presence of mind. And sampajanya, it comes from the word panya. Sometimes the Kubachan in the forest tradition, they just call it for short satipanya, which means mindfulness and wisdom. So wisdom or sampajanya, yeah, means that you're knowing of what's going on, which is what mindfulness is. Yeah? Sati means you know what's going on, you're aware of what's going on, your presence of mind, you understand the contents of what you're experiencing. Yeah? But panya is what informs you as to whether it's right or wrong, wholesome, unwholesome, good, bad, and what you should do with it. Yeah? If it's an unwholesome thing, you should abandon it. If it's a wholesome thing, you should cultivate it. Yeah. So sati sampajanya is the mindfulness and wisdom that knows what's going on and allows you to act responsibly. Well, if anything, probably rather the other way around. So you need sati sampajanya for yoniso manasikara. But I mean, yeah. I mean, it is different functions of the mind.
Last question.
Yeah, last question, okay.
Ajahn, I'd like to find out from you, because I read somewhere that in India, a man was very ill. He was lying in hospital and he almost died 6 times. He lost his breath and he came back 6 times. And upon this very intense experience, even his wife left him because thinking that he's going to die anyway. She left him. But after coming out of this 6 near death or death and then came out of death experience, he kind of let go of self. There's no more self in him. For lay people like us what is the anchor point or a good entry point for us to practice daily impermanence? Like some people, when they wash their face, they say, this is not me, not mine. From your experience, can you guide, like during when we are awake, when we're not in meditation, and also when we're in meditation, what is a good entry point to bring the mind into seeing impermanence on a very daily basis and a moment-to-moment basis as well, if possible? Thank you.
I mean, anicca is, I mean, it's ideally is something that's there now, and now it's not. It's like the ending of something. So the kind of superficiality, the kind of waves on the surface of the ocean, that's not really impermanence. So everything is in flux, or everything is constantly changing. It doesn't have really any impact on me. Yeah. Or they talk about the molecules in the body are constantly changing. Yeah, this body is never the same for 3 seconds. Who cares? Yeah? But if I chop off your right arm, yeah, it's there one moment and then it's gone. It's never going to grow back. Yeah? If your mom dies tomorrow, she's not going to come back. So it's like impermanence is more grave than the kind of superficialities that don't really have any consequences for our actual experience. Yeah? So reflecting on impermanence, which is why in meditation, the Buddha talks about sabbe sankhara samatha, the stilling of all formations. So when you experience a meditation where vitakka vichara has ceased, you know, that thing that we think is us, that thinking mind, yeah? That mind that directs and holds and reflects and ponders and questions and investigates and all that, yeah? Which is vitakka vichara, which is speech formation. Yeah? If that is there one moment and then it's gone, that's an experience of anicca that you never forget. Yeah? Or if your breathing stops, in 4th jhana, the body doesn't breathe anymore. I mean, you try to ask anyone that try to tell you, well, it can't happen. It does happen. When the Buddha says Nirodha ceases, he means ceasing, cessation, end. So breath ceases, in and out breathing ceases in 4th jhana. And taking sabbe sankhara samatha to its limit, you end up in Nirodha Samapatti, which is a cessation of perception and feeling. That which conditions your consciousness, you conditions your mind, conditions your heart, that which is mental formation, perceptions and feelings, is the last formation that ceases in Nirodha Samapatti. When that ceases, the Buddha says you can't be stupid enough to come out of that and not be at least anagami. That's the level of impermanence we're talking about. But having said that, of course, any form of impermanence that you can perceive outside, yeah, which you then skillfully bring inside, yeah, in a sense of as this, so that, as that, so this, as inside, so outside, as outside, so inside, as my fellow human beings, so me, as me, so my fellow human beings. If you bring it inside, yeah, you can use the impermanence in nature, the impermanence around your friends and loved ones, impermanence in any form, and bring it in. So that's also, I'm not saying it's not impermanence, yeah, but what I'm saying is that the impermanence means the endings, the real disappearance of things that once were and all of a sudden are gone. Yeah. So if we experience that kind of impermanence, it obviously has a much more strong impact. Yeah. But also the impermanence of the leaves falling in autumn. It's also impermanence. It's a changing of the season. It's a definite change. When the land is covered in snow, in our monastery in Germany, it's a different landscape. So if I bring that in, say, well, I'm 60 now, that's pretty much autumn. That's close to winter. You know? So it's like you can use everything like that to reflect. Yeah? But don't be fooled that it's easily seen. Because sometimes people say, well, impermanence is easy to see. Suffering is more difficult to see. But non-self, that's really hard to see. No. You see one, you see them all. If you see impermanence, you see suffering. If you see suffering, you see non-self. You see non-self, you see impermanent. You see impermanent, you see non-self. They're the three characteristics. They're always there together. Whatever is impermanent is suffering. Whatever is impermanent suffering is not self. They equally apply to everything that is conditioned, to everything that is formed, created, born, made,